Hi. Thanks so much for joining and tuning in to watch this. I'm excited about this topic, how to have an executive mindset. And the way I came up with this was in talking to some folks about similar topics over the last couple of months and realizing that this is something that we can influence. This is something that we can make work for us. So I'm excited about this topic. And I've talked to a lot of people that are looking forward to watching it afterwards. So I hope that you will find it valuable. So, why am I talking about mindset? Like, why am I excited about this topic? Mindset is everything. The way you can think about it is your mindset is like the lens through which you see the world. So it's, for me, having worn glasses since I was 16, it's all about, are my glasses doing their job if, I can't see anything without them. And if you think about mindset that way, it's the lens through which you see everything. It's really critical, and it determines, if you're wearing rose-colored glasses, you're seeing everything pink. If you're wearing glasses that need to be cleaned, you're seeing everything smudged. I mean, it is truly what's between you and the world. And the great news is you can influence it. You can choose the mindset you need to have, and you can get yourself there, and it makes a huge difference. So I'm excited about the conversation, and in particular, having an executive mindset. Like, what is an executive mindset? I want to talk to you about some elements of what makes that up. But first, think about the most successful, most inspiring leader you've been lucky enough to work with. Maybe it was somebody you saw in action, but maybe it was somebody you reported to or worked closely with. Like, think about their mindset, think about their frame of reference through the world. And that's going to help you to sort of have a touchstone for the elements that we talk about throughout the discussion. So, why is it important for us to talk about this now? Like, it's interesting, executive mindset. Some of you watching this may be thinking, well, I'm not an executive yet, but I really want to be. It is never too early to start thinking about this and planning for this, for the mindset that you want to have. Almost in the way people would say, like, dress for the job that you want, like, put yourself there before you're there. Mindset isn't that much different. So it's never too early to think about executive mindset, but it's also never too late. So what if you're already an executive? Thinking about these things, there may be some areas that it reinforces for you where you're really doing well, or there may be some areas that you think you could influence to work for you a little bit more powerfully. So how do you shift your mindset to where you want it to be? If I'm saying it's the glasses through which you see the world, how can you change your glasses if you think that would be a good thing for you to do? Well, there's a trick that I use with a lot of clients. Think about your career goals. Like, what's the pinnacle? What's the ultimate job that you aspire to? What's a job from which you want to retire? However you want to think about it. Like, what is that big goal? Got that? Okay. So put yourself into the future. Like, let's say maybe that's 10 years off. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's less. Maybe you're already in that job, whatever it is. Put yourself into that future. Now, let me say one thing. If you're already in that job, think about it from a standpoint of you're in the job that you always wanted, the ultimate job, and you are nailing it. So it might be a little bit into the future. If it's 10 years out, put yourself there and think about, what does future you? So I had this conversation with a client, with Carolyn. I'll call her Carolyn, just yesterday. And think about, what I said to her was, okay, what does future Carolyn, 10 years from now, who's in that job and nailing it, need Carolyn to do today to set you up for success? And that's kind of the way you can think about how you can influence your mindset. It's like once you sort of decide what it is you need to do, you can project yourself there. So, but then the trick becomes, like, if you buy into that, if you believe you can influence your mindset, you kind of have to think about where you want to be in order to influence it and put yourself there. So here's some thoughts of some elements of an executive mindset that I think are worth thinking about. So the first is embracing strategic thinking. And an executive mindset really is about shifting your focus from the day-to-day operations to the long-term goals. And, much of the day-to-day things that need to be taken care of are things you may be able to delegate. But the future stuff really needs much more of your active engagement. And when I say delegate the day-to-day, I don't mean like hand it off and walk away. Of course, there's accountability and all the good leadership practices. But the day-to-day someone else can often handle. The long-term future strategic stuff, you really need to be more engaged in. And chances are that's the stuff that lights you up a little bit better anyway. It's also really important as part of that strategic thinking to consider how decisions impact the company's future and think about the decisions that you're making in broader, more strategic terms. And talking to your team about those considerations helps them develop that skill as well. Another aspect of executive mindset is really fostering decisiveness. Executives are expected to make timely and well-informed decisions, and often that has to happen with incomplete information. So it's really important to cultivate confidence in your judgment, in your ability to make decisions, in order to be prepared to take some calculated risks. And you have to take calculated risks, or your competition's going to lap you. Someone else is going to get ahead of you and grab that opportunity. So how do you get comfortable making decisions when you don't have all the information that you need? You often need to sort of grit your teeth and practice and accept the fact that it may not be comfortable at first, but you can do it. And if you're accepting that you're going to be making these decisions with incomplete information, you also have to accept that not every one of those decisions is going to nail it. Some of them will be very successful. Some of them will be less successful. And if you embrace that as a learning opportunity, it's really all good. So fostering decisiveness is another important opportunity. In fact, it's funny, every time I talk, these topics bring up conversations that I've had with clients because it's so circular. The conversations bring up the topics too. But I had a conversation with a client recently who is just taking on a big leadership role within a pharma company, the biggest role he's ever had. And he intentionally goes into decision-making process with like the 80-20 rule. It may even be less than 80 sometimes. He recognizes that he will be able to get at most 80% of the information that he wants to make the decision. Sometimes it's even less, but you can never get to 100%. He recognizes that even if he could get to 95%, the difference between that 80% and 95 is going to be so painful, so laborious, takes so much time that by the time he gets there, the opportunity may have missed. So he intentionally goes into it thinking he wants 80% of the information he needs to know and will make the decision, is very open with his team about that, and expects about an 80% success rate on these decisions. Now that may sound funny, like how is he assuming that it's going to be an 80%? Isn't he settling? It's not that. It's more an awareness and an embrace of the fact that if every decision you make is successful, you are never taking risks. And so in order to lean into that competitiveness and moving forward and doing things you've never done before, you have to accept less than 100% success rate. It's an interesting way to approach it. Another element of executive mindset is prioritizing accountability, both on your own decisions and their outcomes, if they're good and bad, but also for that of your team, and really creating a culture of accountability, setting clear expectations, following through on your own commitments, leading by example in that way, and expecting them to do the same. Another aspect of executive mindset is cultivating emotional intelligence. And this is one that you may not think about all the time. It may not always be on the list, but it really involves understanding and managing your emotions, how things impact you, and considering the impact on others. And, as a leader, that may include active listening, empathy, the ability to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. And one aspect of that, some people think that either emotional intelligence either comes naturally to them or doesn't. And the important thing is everyone can be effective at it, but you have to know whether it comes naturally to you or not. Because if it does, that's great. It's a strength, lean into it and use it. If it doesn't, you just may need to put some support around you or put a little bit more of attention to it in order to make that emotional intelligence work for you. So if it doesn't come naturally to you, it doesn't mean you can't be good at it. You might just need to work a little bit harder. Another aspect is leveraging delegation. This one's really important because it essentially increases exponentially the impact that you can have. The importance of empowering others and delegating tasks effectively cannot be overstated. Not only does it increase the impact that you can have, but it really builds trust with your team and it enables them to step up and develop themselves. If you are always keeping too tight a lid on the tasks that need to be done, it never gives them an opportunity to flex that muscle and step into a bigger role. Another aspect of executive mindset is a focus on continuous learning. A huge piece of this is just staying curious and staying open to new ideas. Whether that's through formal education or training, it might be through networking, it might be just through on-the-job experience, it might even be learning through failures, just being open to that possibility, always to focus on continuous learning. And really, that's for your own personal growth, that's for the growth of your team, and it's providing that example for your team. The most important leadership method we have is leading by example. And one other aspect of executive mindset I want to mention is maintaining a visionary perspective, keeping the company's vision at the forefront of your decision-making process, of everything you do, and really the opportunity you have to inspire your team by constantly talking about that. If you are on your own, in a little bit of a silo, making a decision, even if it's completely aligned to the strategy of the company, the vision of the company, if you don't share that with your team, you prevent them from making that important connection. So by sort of narrating that for your team and just thinking through, it might even feel like a stream of consciousness. Okay, I'm thinking about this in this way and it connects to this, and I think it's the right thing to do for that reason. Taking them down that thought journey with you can really be so helpful for them, both in terms of learning, following your thought process, understanding where they might be able to take a risk. So it's maintaining that visionary perspective, but it's also sharing it with the team real time to allow them to have that same kind of perspective. So there's a number of thoughts, ways that you can intentionally cultivate that executive mindset. And again, sort of change the way you see things. If you're aware that that's an area that could benefit you, you can embrace that and you can influence it and you can show up differently. So some of the questions that I've gotten from folks about executive mindset as I've been having these discussions in the last couple of weeks are really around the potential watchouts. Like, what are the things that might get in the way of me developing and living that executive mindset? And there definitely are some themes here that are worth mentioning. So one is micromanagement tendencies. That can definitely get in the way of executive mindset because it really gets you focusing on the minutia and prevents you from seeing the bigger picture. It can prevent delegation sometimes because you may be grabbing onto some details and hanging on to them. And one of the important things to remember about micromanagement, if it pops up for you, if you're leaning into micromanagement a bit rather than stepping back and delegating more, it doesn't mean you're not an effective leader. It may be a symptom of the fact that you're getting out of your comfort zone. If you're trying a new skill and doing something that's a little bit less comfortable for you, it makes sense that sometimes we retreat to our comfort zone, which might be hanging on to the details. So it's just part of the process of learning and growing. You can do it. You can push through and out of that comfort zone and give it a try. Another watch out, another thing that may get in the way of really embracing that executive mindset is a fear of failure. If you're doing something new that you haven't done before, it is not going to feel comfortable, and it may feel like a big risk, and that failure is a possible outcome. Failure is always a possible outcome. And the risk there is that it can lead to indecisiveness and, really staying in that safe zone and playing it safe. So you have to embrace it, take it on, recognize that if success is guaranteed, it by nature is not a risk. And, even though we feel like, okay, I've done this before, this has worked before, I'm going to do this the same way. Sometimes the situation around you changes and your success is less guaranteed than you might think. So staying in the same place may actually be risky. So there's a lot of elements of this that you have to embrace in order to move forward. But fear of failure is definitely one of the things to be aware of because it can get in your way. Another aspect that could get in the way of an executive mindset is resistance to change. Very, very related to fear of failure, but it may almost get you going on sort of rote memory. I'm just going to keep doing things the way they've done. I'm going to move forward before I stop and think strategically about whether that's the best path forward. Just in general, holding on to some maybe overly comfortable methods, maybe even outdated methods, or being resistant to new ideas because they don't feel comfortable. All of those things can hinder your ability to adapt and really embrace that executive mindset that sort of leans into the openness for change. And then one more that I want to mention, because it comes up definitely as a theme, is a short-term focus. I didn't think about this one initially, but it is an interesting thing that can keep you from really embracing that executive mindset. Because what you do then is you really prioritize the immediate needs over the long-term goals. And it can cause you to miss out on some strategic opportunities, which can limit the growth of your organization. Now, the reality is, if you are with a big public company, short-term focus is almost forced on you because every quarter you have to report results to the street. So it's a real risk if if you're focused on quarterly results, that your focus stays short-term. But it is critical that executives have that mindset to think longer term, to make sure that what you're doing is successful, not just in the short term, but also in a big sustainable way. It can be tough, but it's really important to keep in mind. And by recognizing some of these barriers, you can really more effectively adapt that executive mindset that will foster long-term thinking, long-term planning, willingness to take risks, all the things that have led you to this executive position. Okay, so that's a big, meaty topic. Not just what is an executive mindset, what makes it up, how can you influence it. I know that if you've been engaging in the conversation, it's brought something up for you. Either validated something that you've been thinking. It may have made you challenge your approach to something, or it may have brought up more questions for you. But whatever is the case, I would love to hear from you. Like, what are your thoughts on this? What do you want to talk more about this? Is there some way that I can help? So send me a note either through LinkedIn or through my website. And let me know what your thoughts are, and whether you want to discuss it and you can take it farther. I'd love to engage in that. Or if there's some way that you disagree or thought you have to add, I'd love to hear that too. So thank you so much for listening in. Look forward to hearing what's going on for you in terms of executive mindset.